Thank you, Carl. Welcome everyone to the WCA Annual Members Meeting 2024. For those of you joining via Twitch, we have a number of WCA staff in this meeting. We have just confirmed that we have a voting quorum of now 161 voting members present out of the 260 total voting members within the organisation. The voting members have been briefed on the explanation of voting procedures. We're going to move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of the previous annual meeting. If you have any concerns about the previous annual meeting minutes, they were provided in the information pack. Now is the time to speak up. Otherwise, we'll move to a vote to accept those as a true and accurate representation of the meeting we held last year in Korea in August at our World Championships. All right. All in favour of accepting the minutes of the 2023 annual meeting as a true and accurate statement of the meeting that occurred in Korea last year? So just a reminder, if you are a voting member and you do approve of the 2023 annual meeting minutes as a true and accurate representation, we ask that you raise your hand. If you are having troubles raising your hands, just you can write a message in the chat if that is easier. All right, thank you for your patience. You can now all put your hands down. I appreciate your patience, everyone. Unfortunately, it's not something that we can tally up after the meeting. We need to count the votes during the meeting. Thankfully, there's only going to be one more of these. So yeah, thank you. If you can all lower your hands. And we have a count of 149 in favour. So let's get those last few minutes down. All that are opposed to the 2023 minutes as a fair and accurate representation of the meeting that was held in Korea last year. Now, please raise your hand. Have 0 opposed. Anyone who abstains from this vote, that the 2023 minutes are a fair and accurate representation of the meeting that was held in Korea in 2023. Please raise your hands. Okay, thank you. You can lower your hands now. We have, at the conclusion of that vote, 149 in favour, 11 abstain. That's a 93% approval, so the motion passes. Moving on, we're going to move on to the Executive Director Activity Statement, which I will deliver. So, good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you. It's great to have you all here today to share in the success of the organisation. 2020, Ruben, we did here, moving on. 2023 for the WCA was a year of continued growth for the organisation and continued the astronomical growth we saw in 2022. To provide some of the statistics, we sanctioned 2,135 competitions, doubling that of 2022. WCA competitions are attended by 61,000 unique competitors, 37,000 of those joining us for the first time. Additionally, we sanctioned competitions in 97 different countries in 2023. I think it's fair to say this growth can only be attributed to the hard work of the volunteers who spend their time making the WCA what it is today. This consists of an enormous 580 community members who hold a volunteer role as staff member, either as a junior delegate, full delegate, committee, or team member. It is especially impressive to see the volunteers who are willing to commit to multiple roles to ensure the continued success of the organisation. On behalf of the rest of the leadership team, I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to all of you guys who volunteer their time in support of the WCA to achieve its mission. As I mentioned at last year's annual meeting, a key focus of the organisation has been establishing a strong financial state. We're delighted to share, as will be shown by Raymond's upcoming Treasurer report, that we have established that strong financial position that ensures the WCA will continue operating even in times of turmoil. As such, we've now been able to turn our focus towards funding key projects to propel the WCA forward. Recent highlights of this include the redesign of the registration system, which has just gone live, redesign of our front-end pages of the website as well, which are currently underworks, support of regions developing and maintaining strong regional organisations, funding equipment for regions otherwise unable to support the purchase of new competition gear, and providing support to competitions partaking in our very first newcomer month at the start of 2024. We look forward to continuing work with the relevant teams and committees to deliver exciting projects to propel the WCA and speedkeeping into the future. The WCA can only do so much as a global governing body for the sport of speedkeeping. the large amount of growth we have seen in recent years can be attributed to the hard work of our recognised regional organisations to support the local efforts of the WCA in their respective regions. The WCA recognises 46 regional organisations as the local organisation for their region, responsible for supporting local WCA activities. This includes 6 new organisations added in 2026 and 8 in the year 2024. We've been proud to support these organisations through development and governance grants, along with waiving dues for all national championships organised under the banner of a recognised regional organisation. I'm extremely happy to announce that the WCA will continue to provide regional organisations a waiver of dues for their national championship in 2025. The outlook for the WCA is bright, with plenty of work to be done to ensure we continue to serve the community of speedcubers around the world. As we grow, we need to develop new ways to gather and process community feedback as a factor in the overall decision-making process. Ensuring that members feel involved in the organisation will continue to be a high priority of the WCA to ensure that we can effectively deliver our services in a streamlined manner. Additionally, this coming year we'll be heavily investing in our most valuable resource, our staff. We'll be making and building a platform to provide training to delegates and our staff, and we believe that this will make a huge strides to improve competition quality. Specifically for 2025, we look forward to welcoming the community to Seattle for the Rubik's WCA World Championship. Set to be the largest ever sanctioned WCA competition, we're excited that over 2,000 of our community members will gather to crown a new set of world champions. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for the dedication that you show to the sport of speedcubing and your willingness to share that with others. The effort that each and every one of you put into the WCA is what makes it what it is today. Thank you. And moving on, we're going to move on to Raymond, who will be presenting the 2023 financial report.
All right, thank you, Ethan, for going over all of that. Really reminds me why I am so proud to be a member of this organization. My name is Raymond Gosla, and I am the treasurer of the World Cube Association. I'm going to be going over our 2023 financial report that was included in the packet of materials for this meeting, and it's also linked to on the WCA website. So if you would like to pull that up and follow along, you are more than welcome to. So I will be referencing some of the charts and graphs in that document, but I'll be explaining everything. So even if you're not looking at it, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So the finances of the WCA have grown very, very fast in the post-COVID world. The graph that we have on that first page of content in this document shows that the height of the bar of our revenue in the pre-2022 years is barely a blip compared to the amount of money we've been dealing with in 2022 and 2023. So that involves a lot of changes for us as an organization, both in terms of what the money's being used for and how we handle having that much money at all. We used to file our taxes on a literal postcard, and now the tax return that we are preparing for 2023 based on this, the financials of this report, is nearly a 40-page document that we're preparing. So the biggest change in our finances that has been brought by this growth is that WCA engages an accounting firm, an external accounting firm, for the review of our annual financials and preparation of these tax filings. So this is allowing us to draw on that expertise and allow the WCA Financial Committee to focus our passion on things that we are more equipped to do, because we are not necessarily educated on the 40-page tax filings. So some of the things we've learned from working with this accounting firm that involve kind of changes to the way that we recognize certain things, to little things. Just as examples, we recognize our championship support a little differently, as opposed to when we provide support for major championships, that's being recognized in the year of the championship, even if we paid out the money beforehand. And we're also recognizing, we're assigning some value to what are called donated services, and I'll go over that a little more lightly. These are very, they may sound boring, but they're just an example of what we're getting from this accounting firm. They're explaining to us how to better recognize the finances of the WCA. And so this report document that we have is, it has an intro kind of focused on a WCA audience of about 4 pages, and then the body of the report is looking more at it's for the accounting experts, so to speak, who aren't familiar with the WCA but are very familiar with accounting. So moving down into this report, I'm going to talk about some of the overall trends that we are seeing and then the actual numbers that we are looking at. So moving on to that next page of the report, you will see the major trend in the WCA's income in 2023 is that dues have overtaken sponsorship as our major source of revenue. So in 2022, we saw sponsorship was about 65% of the overall revenue of the WCA, compared to 23% for dues, and we've seen that kind of flip on its head in 2023. Sponsorship is now only 23% of our income, and WCA dues are now 71% of our income. That's both due to changes in the dues policy on how much we're collecting in dues and the increase in the number of competitions between 2022 and 2023. So what that means for our organization is our finances are no longer quite as completely reliant on one major sponsor. Our WCA dues that come from WCA competitions are overall a more reliable source of income in a way. We're going to keep having those competitions, and so we don't need to worry about potentially if we lose a sponsorship, the whole organization crumbles potentially. So that's what we've seen from 2022 moving into 2023. There's some other sources of revenue as well, but again, those are our two major sources. And I do want to go over just a little bit when we talk about donated services, because those appear under revenue. The accountants have advised us that we should be recognizing the value of certain services that we would have paid for otherwise. So for example, bookkeeping, we have to do bookkeeping, and that's done by the WFC, the WCA Financial Committee. And so we have to provide estimated value of what we would have paid had we paid for those things. And that's what shows up in our revenue under donated services. Just want to stress and reiterate the WCA is a volunteer-driven organization, and there is much work done by WCA staff, which is not reflected there in assigned a value. We're just doing that because it is in keeping with how it is supposed to be accounted for under US accounting guidelines. Looking at the expenditures of the WCA, we are seeing that the assets of the WCA are growing. The assets of the WCA are not just the cash that we have on hand. Other things that we value as an asset are things like the WCA trademark, which has a value. The software that we're developing, I'll talk more about that in a second. And those payments of those major championship support for future years, that's still counted as an asset of the WCA until the year of the championship. So to kind of talk about our assets and then the expenses, I'm going to focus on the software contractors program. This started in 2023, so it's a great thing to talk about for 2023. And it also covers both assets and expenses. So we're paying software contractors, as Ethan mentioned, to work on things like the registration system. Some of that money that is spent is categorized as an asset in terms of it's the value of what they are building for us, whether it's the registration system or other new things. So that's counted as an asset of the WCA. Other amounts of what's being paid there is counted just as an expense, something that we are paying to them. And some of that is program expenses and some of that is supporting expenses. So program expenses are the expenses of the WCA that further its mission. Supporting expenses are the expenses that support the internal work. And so our software contractor payments, those expenses kind of go a little of both, because some of the work that they're doing is supporting the WCA mission outside directly, the competition websites that you all see, and then some of it is support for internal work of the WCA. So that's kind of a software contractor payments is kind of the most complicated thing because it splits into all those different departments, but we can kind of look at everything else as whether it is a program activity or a supporting activity. So our various development programs that Ethan mentioned, the equipment funding for communities that are building capacity, the regional organization support funding to help build more regional organizations, those are all generally growing. We'll talk a little bit more about the numbers later, but those are all growing. They're at different stages though. So for example, at the end of 2023, we were just starting that regional organization support program, while the equipment funding program was a bit further in development at that point. We also have the gear program, which is where WCA orders equipment from SpeedStacks at discounted rates, and that equipment is passed on to delegates at cost. That's something that doesn't cost the WCA anything, but it is a program that we support through our financial ability to make those purchases and then pass it on to the delegates. And then, so those are kind of our programs. And then when we talk about supporting expenses, we are talking about things like those accounting fees, what we're paying to the accountants who are supporting us in that, and the tax filings and all of that, subscriptions to various services that are used internally in the WCA, all those various things that support the internal work of the WCA. And so those are increasing as well because we're building a larger organization. We're doing more things. We're doing things like getting that help from accountants, and that does cost more. So that kind of goes over the trends that we were seeing. I'm now going to move down. I'm going to talk about the specific numbers now that we've gotten through the WCA focused. We're going to move down to the part of the report that is written in accountant ease, so to speak. So when we look at the assets of the WCA at the end of 2023, we're seeing about $324,000 in cash. We're seeing about $10,000 in accounts receivable. Those are invoices like for WCA dues that haven't been paid yet but have been issued. We're seeing about $120,000 in prepaid expenses. That's that championship support for future years, years beyond 2023. Have about $20,000 in value from the software developed by the point at the end of 2023. And then the other things on the report where it says intangibles, that's talking about our trademarks, the value of the WCA trademark, and other assets is referring to retainers for various professional services. So we sum up, the WCA has $548,000 in assets, but again, only $324,000 of that is actual cash that can be expended, so to speak. We don't have any liabilities, any outstanding invoices at the end of 2023. So that is our statement of the financial position at the end of 2023. When we look at our activities, we're seeing that that gear program doesn't really have any much net income or expense one way or the other. It basically cancels out. We see we got about $1,200 in donations last year. We have those donated services for those various things valued at about $29,000. We've got $150,000 in sponsorship coming in and $450,000 in dues coming in. And again, you see that dues have well overtaken sponsorship in our revenue in 2023. Other income is various things like interest and cash back on our purchases. That's about $8,000. Our expenses are broken into those program activities and supporting activities, as I said before. And there's a chart on the next page after that that kind of breaks down what those various things are going into. I won't belabor the points too much because I would like to get us on with this meeting, but hopefully now that you've heard all of that and you can look at that explanation at the top, that WCA focused explanation, you can see the explanation there and go down into the numbers, the weeds of the report, and understand what these various numbers are referring to, because it might not be immediately apparent at first glance. So we see that the net assets of the WCA have grown significantly from the beginning of 2023 to the end of 2023. And so I will wrap this up to kind of conclude what this all means for the WCA. The WCA motion on finances says that the WCA Financial Committee and the board are charged with guaranteeing the retention of sufficient reserves and to assure continuation of the activities and programs of the WCA. So that is what is happening here. We have retained sufficient reserves. We have that cash on hand to assure that even in the case of turmoil, of disaster, of emergency, that we can continue the WCA as it exists. If you dig a little further into the report, the accountants did the math of how much money we spend on average each month and how much cash we have on hand. We have enough cash on hand to cover our expenses for about 9 months, which is not bad. But again, we were shut down for COVID for longer than that. And even more importantly than that, our expenses in many ways are underpinning livelihoods. For example, the software contractors are relying on the money that we pay them to pay their bills and their lives. So that's something to keep in mind, the importance of maintaining these reserves and assuring that continuation. So the WCA is really, it is not a move fast and break things, Silicon Valley startup kind of organization. We're not in the business of taking risks that could be a 50% chance of bankrupting our organization, things like that. We are intentionally risk averse with our finances, and we want to maintain as close to 100% chance as possible of not becoming insolvent as an organization due to the financial choices that we are making. We have spent 20 years building something very special together, and we do not want to take a risk of breaking that. So just to wrap it up, we are now in a position where we can be and are running deficits. I don't want to speak about the year 2024 too much, as it's not complete yet, but we are definitely seeing that the expenses are starting to match income, as opposed to 2023, where we were really building up those reserves. So we are now, again, in a position where we have built a reserve and we're starting to build out those programs for 2024 and onward. So that is about all I have to say about the financial report. If you ever have any questions about the details of it, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will hand it back to Ethan if he wants to step in and say anything else or move along with the meeting.
No, thank you very much, Raymond. It's very good that we can gather to review the financial report all together at once. I will ask if anyone has brief questions for Raymond about the details of the report. You can raise your hand and ask them now. If you have more in-depth questions, as Raymond said, I think it would be best to handle that over an email outside of this meeting. But yeah, if you have any brief questions about the report or just any clarifications, you can raise your hand. I'll give you 30 seconds now to raise your hand, just to ask Raymond any questions. Perfect. In that case, we'll go through to our final vote, which is to accept the financial report as delivered to the annual meeting. All those in favour of accepting Raymond's financial report, please raise your hand. Yep, so just for those that might have missed it, those that approve of accepting Raymond's report to the minutes of this meeting, please raise your hand now if you're a voting member. Blake is just going through and tallying up the votes. Hopefully, should not be too long. Thank you for your patience. I thank you all for your patience. You can now lower your hands. So we have counted the votes, that's 155 in favour. Let's get all the hands down. Right, all that opposed to accepting Raymond's financial report to the minutes of this meeting, raise your hands. Tim, so just to confirm, that was a vote for opposed. We have you down as approved. Right, there it is. Sorry, Tim, just need confirmation of your.
Ethan, he said in the chat that Zoom isn't letting him lower his hand.
That should work. Perfect. We count 0 opposed and all that abstain from the vote to accept Raymond's report to the minutes of this meeting. Sorry, Tim, I don't know what's happening with your hand. I keep lowering it, but it keeps popping back up. We have 7 votes in abstention. You may not see the hands here, but it's just because they did not put their hand up for any of the options. Tim, I might just ask you to try leave the meeting and coming back in. The hand come up. But that concludes the financial report. Moving on to our next section, which is the date and place of the next meeting. We're happy to report that the next meeting will be held at the WCA Rubik's WCA World Championships 2024 in Seattle. 2025 in Seattle. We'll make sure that we have an online option available for staff members that are unable to attend in person. But otherwise, we look forward to welcoming you all to Seattle for our annual meeting in July next year. And with that, marks the closing of our 2024 annual members meeting.